It's okay?
Laboratory for Entrepreneurship. Our distinguished guest this evening, Professor Bergmann. Professor Bergmann is famous for a concept for which he coined the term new work, and that concept is particularly important in a situation that we face now with a meltdown of the financial system. That's why we decided to, on short notice, do an interview with Fridtjof. Fridtjof, maybe in the beginning you could give us a short summary of what the importance, what the content of the concept of new work is.
Okay, 20 years in 5 minutes, or less. New work is something of a misnomer. Actually, from the very beginning, it had to do with 3 things and not with one thing. With a new economy, on the basis of a new economy, a different way of working, new work, and on the basis of new work and a new economy, a new culture. So the idea is new economy, new work, new culture, those 3 steps. New economy meant from the very beginning, even in the 1980s, there are a rapidly evolving set of very interesting technologies that you could call liberating technologies, or technologies for the other 80%. The 80% who don't live in oases, but the 80% that live in the desert. I on purpose avoid the word poor. For those people, for the other 80%, technologies are rapidly developing which make an economy possible that produces everything that is needed for food, for shelter, for energy, for communication, and for mobility on site, in villages or in neighborhoods or in Stadtteilen. So we don't have to produce anymore in enormous factories, but we can produce in small shops, and the economy of the future is an economy that will produce in small shops. All of those things that I just mentioned, with new technologies. That's the new economy. Unfortunately, in Germany, there was always a lot of misunderstanding. People thought that new work simply meant doing what you really, really want to do, and everybody will be happy as long as they do that. That's a terrible mistake. You need a new economy. And right now, you very much need a new economy, which is obvious. So, on the basis of a new economy, people can do work that is meaningful, that is interesting, that is to them significant, and above all, that strengthens people rather than exhausts people. New work. New culture, simply a totally different concept of human nature. Not the concept of human nature that we inherited from the 18th century, that basically human beings are little Raubtiere, little monsters. You have to be very careful that they don't bite off your hand when you sit next to them on a bus. But human beings are very fragile. Human beings are weak. Human beings are shy. Human beings are easily discouraged. Therefore, what we need is a culture not that tames people, which is the culture that is now fortunately dying, but we need a culture that strengthens people in every respect, from education, from kindergarten, to how we architect, how we design, how we make cities, how we arrange mobility. Everything in the culture should strengthen people rather than weaken people. That's the idea of the new culture. So, new work is the beginning of a new culture, is the way into a new culture. But all the other things are necessary to create a different human being, which is now possible.
Fridtjof, maybe could you give us examples how we could imagine that new work is doing in praxis? I know that you are with very modern technology like the fabricator or the hanging gardens. Could you give us a few examples of that?
I brought you one example for fun, and we can hand it around. It's not for Germany. It's for the 80% that I call desert people, as opposed to the people who live in oases. You are all oasis people. I avoid the term poor people because I, instead of that, use the word desert people, because poor people very much links up in Germany, especially with the idea of sozial schwach. And that's insulting as anything can be, socially weak. So here is something that you can touch, you can bite into it, but it will break your teeth. It is a miraculous little thing. It is called EcoBond. It is, you believe it or not, and you don't have to believe it, it is 97% earth and 3% glue. Glue made from 4 different things. And you can simply mix earth with this and put it under pressure, and you don't need a huge amount of pressure, no electric pressure. Human pressure is enough. In German, ein Hebel, a lever is enough. If you have a heavy person, you can have a relatively short lever, which will be enough. If you have a very light person, you need more wood. But with this, and this is one step where we come together, with this we now are in the process of creating a great number of different enterprises. And new work has become, partly thanks to my friendship with Professor Faltin or Günther, has become more and more entrepreneurial. And at this point, it is extremely entrepreneurial. And he mentioned, besides this, if you want to touch it, but don't keep it. The idea is that with this you can make bricks, with this you can make roofs, with this you can make containers, with this you can make places in which you can conserve water. The big word is conservation of water, and some people say the next century wars will be fought over water rather than oil, so this has to do with conserving water. Now, Professor Faltin or Günther, and I will say Günther and you will say Fritjof, mentioned the fabricator. The fabricator was laughed at, smiled at, called Spinnerei in German for a very long time. No, in English, nonsense. Turkey. At this point, the fabricator has become a very serious thing. 4 years after I published the book about it. At this point, somebody named Andreas Gebhardt, who is a professor, but there are some professors who try to be useful, and not just professors, and we are among them. He has created a very flourishing enterprise. He makes real money by using the fabricator to produce things that are useful for your teeth, if your teeth have rotten out from under you, useful for prothesen, that is for artificial limbs, useful if you have a hole in the head so that somebody can make something that fits exactly into that hole. But the fabricator can at this point also be used, and is being used, and makes very good money being used for parts for 15-year-old Mercedes. To buy the part for a 15-year-old Mercedes is sometimes next to impossible, but in any case it's very expensive. And with a fabricator you can make